This community is not just Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of the PerformHappy Podcast. My guest, Cassie Rice, is she is a very well-known gymnastics coach. She has coached Olympians. She has been called the Regional Coach of the Year, USAG Coach of the Year, International Elite Coach of the Year. She has got a lot of accolades that would tell somebody that this is a really phenomenal coach. And I think since all of those accolades, she has become exponentially better in a lot of ways. So Cassie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So would you give everybody I know your career is, pretty epic, but if you could give kind of the highlights of your coaching career, just so everybody can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, so I bought a gym in 1992 here that was really tiny, and we somehow got an Olympian in the year 2000, and I coached her at the Olympics, but we went through the whole Bella Caroli, very intense coaching. If you're not making them suffer and do a lot of work, you're not a good coach. If you let them out of assignments, you're not a strong coach. And, it was about toughness and toughness and toughness. And that's got us to really high levels in gymnastics, but then learned afterwards in coaching my Olympian and coaching my daughter how many negative effects there were from that. And that led to a 180 of how we coach, and I'm a totally different coach now.
Okay. And I think that's such a really great thing to bring up, is that you didn't just have to be, the coach you were taught to be. You got to learn and grow. And I think athletes, that is what we want for these athletes, is that they make mistakes, they learn, they grow, and coaches should be under that, that same ideal, that we make mistakes, we learn, we grow, we improve over time.
Yes, and in all the education we did, it was all about technique and all about work and all about numbers and but there's not a lot of training for younger coaches on the mind and what it's doing when you coach about what's wrong, what's not good enough, how they need to work harder. They don't really educate you on what long-term damage that can do to an athlete in their confidence and self-esteem. And I do not want anybody going through this sport if it damages that side of it, because it's just not worth it. It's not worth them not believing in themselves or making choices later that harm them in their own life because they were told you're not quite doing good enough, you're not working hard enough, all the negative things that coaching can do. We definitely need to be educated on that.
Absolutely. And so obviously that was, 90s, early 2000s, it seems to me from the outside perspective, I was still competing and starting my little baby coaching career. It seemed like you just coached the way that you were coached and you made the people do the thing. And it was all about winning. It was all about results, and mental health was not really even in the picture. Was there any education whatsoever in your early career about, the mental side of this sport?
No, absolutely no focus on that whatsoever. In fact, I was called the quote nice coach because I wasn't making them do as much as all these other coaches were doing. I wasn't harsh on my athlete, and, those kinds of things. But still, looking back, the damage that I did, and not watching their body language or seeing if they're struggling or changing the assignment. It was just like I was the god of assignments, and that's what you did because that's what's done at the elite level, and you must finish it no matter what, all costs. And didn't have an open enough relationship at that time to learn about the suffering that she was going through, and that a lot of that had to do with Marta Caroli and the body image and weight issues that led her to suffer for many years, and just learned about it 5 years ago, which was heart-wrenching. I should have been there. So I changed 100% what I do.
Mm-hmm. So what happened was Tasha, your Olympian, came out and can you tell a little bit about how you made that big change and what came to light?
Yeah, so she was told as she was going through the process of the Olympics and making it, and she wanted to make it to the Olympics. She wanted to do great there, and she wanted to please everybody. But Marta said, lighter girls fly higher, and that was all she needed. And so that began the process of trying to lose weight and diet. And, turned into a full-blown eating disorder of binging and purging. And, she got to the point where she almost died, and that I didn't find out about all of that until 2018, which, she was well done with gymnastics by then. And I think it's because it's such a secretive and shameful, people think, thing to go through, that they hide it so well. So she hid it from moms and me and everybody. But, it's something that we definitely want to expose so people are aware of these comments. And I did a ton of research and interviewed tons of people after that and learned, oh my God, it's almost everywhere. And you keep hearing about celebrities and, acting and all different genres going through these same exact problems. And so how important it is for coaches to not make comments about body image and weight and all of that stuff. It definitely makes them psychologically a problem. And you need to have intuitive eating. And that's what I've learned a lot about since all of that.
Yeah. And thank goodness there's so much more education now. The coaches have access. So the coaches are not playing nutritionist in their gym anymore. Right. Or we hope that they're not, unless they are.
Right. Yes. And I learned a lot of it because my daughter also went through an eating disorder. And the problem that our society has is labeling things good food and bad food, and the psychological side of eating, and saying, like, here, this cupcake is bad, and that chicken breast and vegetables is good. And really all of that messes with kids' minds, and it makes them, go into that binge cycle. And there's so many problems with it, and with social media and body image, it just creates a whole host of problems that we do. I mean, there's education out there, but it's not near enough in the gymnastics world. So we do need more. It's helpful.
Definitely. Yep. And there's like the 4 pillars. I think every athlete really needs to thrive. They need their, food and hydration. They need rest and recovery. They need that physical training, and they need the mental training. And with those 4 things in place, kids can be really happy, healthy, and successful.
Yes.
But it seems like there's still this holdover of you can't be nice and raise champions. Do you agree? Do you agree with that old feeling that you have to be really hard on yourself? You have to be really hard on your athletes, or they're not going to rise to a high enough level.
So there's, I think though, that if the child doesn't have it in them to be at that high level, then you're just damaging them to make them work, because the elite gymnastics world is really, really hard. And nobody who hasn't been through it understands it really, and how difficult that training is. And if that is perceived, I'd like to ban the word pushing, because pushing implies I don't have control over it. So if you're pushing a kid to someplace they think is too hard or too much on them, then in a way that's abusive to them. So they sometimes will please and still do it anyway, but then they're a victim later on because it wasn't their actual choice. So what I think is really important is setting up motivation and guidelines, and here's the challenge, so that they can challenge themselves if they feel they physically can do it. And you keep setting those things in place, so that way when they go there, it's their choice. And I think that creates a healthier way to improve, instead of, well, I'm going to make you do this and you have to do that, and this is what champions do, even though this conditioning is miserable, you have to. Then they feel, it's just not mentally healthy for them to grow up that way.
Well, and I'm going to speak for myself for a second and say I had no concept of consent when I left gymnastics and went into the world post gymnastics. I did not know that no can mean no. I did not know that you can disagree respectfully and have a different perspective, which caused all kinds of harm. And that's one of my driving forces with these girls is you get to have a voice, even if you're 10. You get to let somebody know if you feel uncomfortable. You get to say, I don't feel quite ready for that right now.
Right.
Can we try something else? And it's so sad that I've got these 10-year-olds who are having to educate their coaches on how to listen to a kid.
Yeah.
But they're doing it. I mean, I am like so incredibly proud of these kids. And so how do we make these changes? It just feels so big. It feels so big that in, 4,000 gyms in the US, there's a lot of coaches out there who think, get up and do it, or get off my beam, or do it, or climb the rope, or do it, or the whole team has push-ups. Like,
Right.
Cassie, what can we do? What are the actions that we can take as parents, as coaches, to really continue to move this sport forward?
Well, I think that one of the most important things what you're doing is kind of getting the communication out there and getting that knowledge out there. It takes a lot of bravery for a child or a parent who doesn't want to upset a coach to speak up. So how they do that can definitely influence it, because if you go in attacking a coach or a program, yes, they might be like, all right, you can leave. But if you go in as saying, how something is affecting your child or yourself and what harm it might be doing, and help them in some, you have a lot. I always send out your links to your podcast to different parents when I'm trying to help educate them about what that pressure or that expectation or that result oriented focus is doing to their kid. So, trying to get that out there more and more. And I think USA Gymnastics from the top down, showing Simone kind of leading the way on what she thinks she can do. All that kind of stuff is empowering. That is important. So everywhere, like hitting it from all sides. And I'm so proud that you have 10-year-olds who can speak up to coaches. That's amazing. Those kind of things need to keep being praised and, adding on to that, because it's going to spread.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things is to say, okay, well, if you don't feel comfortable, do you have a suggestion that you might offer to the coach of something you could do instead?
Right.
Okay. And then what if they say no? Do you have another suggestion? Or what if you had another idea? What if you had such a growth mindset that you came with a backpack full of 17 ideas?
Right.
And then the coach knows you're trying and you want to do something. And I mean, it's really amazing when these kids go in and go, okay, well, what about this? Could I try that instead? What if this? And coaches
Right.
seems like they'll finally at least roll their eyes and be like, oh my gosh, fine, get a mat and stop talking.
Right, right. Oh, that's good. That's good, because we want them to be in control. Because listen, if you take a kid and you're always telling them you're not doing enough, I'm in charge of you, you shouldn't be scared of that, what you think is wrong, all these things, when they grow up, they become in their 20s and 30s. And that's what, really made me change. I'm like, oh, they're not confident. What did I do? Did I tell them they're not good enough somehow? What did I do? Because the sport is not worth growing up to be an adult who doesn't have confidence, who makes good choices for them. And they end up in marriages or relationships or with a boss that treats them poorly. And I'm like, that is not what our sport's supposed to do to women. We have so many girls in the sport, but girls turning into women need to be empowered. So we get female leaders.
Absolutely. Yeah. I look at it like, yeah, they're going to eventually get that back handspring, but working through that fear and being able
Right.
to find their voice, being able to learn how to collaborate with someone in a position of authority. I mean, these are such amazing life skills that
Right. 100%.
they have this little blip of life that's in a leotard, and they have a whole lot of life outside of that I feel like we have a responsibility to set these kids up for success.
Right. And no one remembers 10 years ago who won whatever. No one remembers. It's not important, but they do remember that feeling of fear, or that feeling of doubt, or that negative feeling of sadness. That's what they'll remember. So we want to make sure that we're there to support them through all different parts of their life, not just the results. You won the Olympics. That's all that matters. No.
So I had a mom in the Perform Happy community this last week email me, outside. I'm going to keep everything totally anonymous, but she sort of told me about this situation with a coach. And I'd love to know what your advice would be. So she's asking, she's describing this is what the coach is doing. And she said, what do I do? What do I say? How do I help my kid in this situation? So it seemed like the coach had been targeting her athlete, leaving her out of team rewards, mocking her in a baby voice, using double standards. So recognizing some kids' skill accomplishments, but not hers, gossiping loudly with other coaches. Her daughter didn't feel liked, supported, valued, or cared about. This coach would make fun of others by comparing them to her daughter, and her mental blocks, like, oh, don't be like her. Getting afraid now, demeaning comments, sent out a notification that anyone who is seen crying in the gym is going to have to call home and get picked up. And the mom's worried that the coach would retaliate if mom mentioned anything. So this needless to say made my blood boil. What would you advise her in this situation?
So the the worry of retaliation, it's like the whole bully mentality. Well, if I do say something to the person who's really angry, they're going to come at us. And I understand that feeling. It's just that then you're accepting it. This is okay then. I mean, you're basically saying that what they're doing is okay if you do nothing. So I feel like you would have to try, and you have to also be willing to say, this sport is not worth it if I do need to leave, or if there's no other gym to go to that's suitable around you, then you have to say, this sport is not worth my child's self-esteem. And I would say that the owner of the gym, I don't know if the coach is the owner, but you have
coach is the owner in this situation.
Then that's a really hard spot, because I think you can try some, face-to-face communication with that person and try to educate them about these things you've learned, outside of it from others' perspectives, because you could go in saying maybe they just have no education and they think I'm going to make fun of them so that I encourage them, or, something that you could maybe think they have, that I'm just trying my best to motivate you. That's why I do these little comments or these digs, because if you're not educated or aware of the harm you're doing, you may think that's no big deal. And so, really saying how that affects your child, what they're feeling, how they're upset at home. We tried to make some little videos on our YouTube channel and put them into TikToks as well, that showed what a harsh coaching does to the kid when they walk away. And maybe they're not thinking about that side of it. We have these little 1-minute clips of that, maybe showing them those, or, saying, this is what my kid feels like. I don't know. That's a hard one if it's coming from the top down.
Yeah.
That's when the Bella Caroli era was really hard for us, because here was the conditioning. It was absolutely insane, like literally insane conditioning. And we all had to do it or be considered, not living up to his standards. And so we all just did it. And, I tried to help Tasha cheat on it because she was going to die. It was so hard. My arms were killing me from just spotting. But those kinds of things, because we can't speak up or didn't speak up, we could have spoken up, but I was too young to have the confidence to do that. And so it continues longer than it should, because no one's going in to say, what is it this is doing to my child?
Yeah. 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 So this mom actually went and had a meeting with this coach.
That's good.
And she came from this place of collaboration, understanding, asking questions. She was like, I bit my tongue because, you don't want to go in guns blazing. It's a big, defensiveness party. And she said she noticed a little bit of change, and
she's probably going to need to redo that 10 more times.
Every 2 weeks, you might have to have a little touch up on that. And, and I of course said, if this is impacting your daughter's mental health continually, then it's time to go gym shopping.
Right. And maybe every 2 weeks she could send a quick email that says, thank you for whatever's positive. And here's some other things that my daughter's still struggling with mentally, because it's hard to understand. There's some kids, they're just like, poof, whatever you say blows off me. It doesn't bother me. Although sometimes I believe it does later on. So, but some kids, it really affects a lot harsher and a lot stronger than you would think it would. A little comment or a little compliment to somebody else, and you didn't mean it in any way. So that education is helpful to the coach. Like, if I know that, oh, wow, no, I was just talking to that person. It wasn't meant to say you're not doing good. I think internally they took it that way because they have some inner feelings. So let's try to work on building them up. But, knowing that is helpful.
I agree. Yeah. When I was a coach, I remember a mom came up to me and said that her daughter felt like I didn't like her. And I was like, gut bomb of, I have failed. I had this whole, I am the worst. Right. And then she was like kind of reflecting like, wow, yeah, you know what? I have been frustrated with her and I could see how she feels that way. And so I then have an opportunity to grow as a coach and to find more patience and to find a better way to communicate. If it's a person who the communication doesn't come naturally, all personalities don't always mesh. So as coaches, that's our challenge. How do I and so this mom also mentioned the word uncoachable, that this coach was like, your kid is uncoachable. Your kid is uncoachable, which I have heard linked with abusive coaches. They typically will say, well, your kid's uncoachable. And it just shows a total lack of a growth mindset. Nobody's uncoachable if you're a great coach, from my perspective.
Yes. And empathy for that. What does that mean? Like, why what are you saying about them that makes you say uncoachable? To have empathy for somebody there's kids who have huge struggles making a change. Does that mean they're uncoachable? Or what is it that you mean when you're saying uncoachable? Is it that they're literally not listening to you at all? Or, what is it? And it would be hard to believe that a person just completely uncoachable.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it. Yeah. Like when I used to coach kindergartners, you could either be like, they're wild and crazy, I can't handle it. Or you could be more fun, and then they listen better. You move around more, they follow you.
In fact, I was just doing a video of this Othello game. It's like, and it created these great results where if the kid didn't make the pass, the coaches got to put their piece down. But if they made it, they got to put their piece down. And it was us versus them. And then I was like, oh, you messed up. But great, the coaches get to put a piece down. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to make the next one because they didn't want us to get a piece. So, like finding those kinds of, fun part of the whole game, in achieving. You go, okay, but we'll have fun doing it. Then it really lightens up the whole stress part of it. And that's what we do a ton of games, Connect Four and cards and Othello and, anything we can think of to make it a game. We do skee ball up the cheese into a upside down mushroom and, just anything. So, and then go, oh, okay, well, you get to do that after you do this. And then it makes this whole environment of fun.
Oh my gosh.
They love it. So if you could think of ways to do that, that parent, it's not the parent's job to educate the coaches, but once they find that, their coaches go, oh my God, it's so much better.
Yeah. So. Well, and with social media, I think you can look at so many ideas anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember coaching and looking online and being like, I don't know how to fix a mental block. What do I do? And I just like, oh, well, there's no solution. Moving on. Yeah. Now, I mean, you can find a million games, I'm sure, to play with gymnasts.
Yeah. And letting them choose. I always say to you, kind of lower your expectations. And then when they've exceeded it, you cheer and you keep giving them a challenge, but it's their choice to go up there, but you only had this. And if they are only down there, you still say, yay, and keep doing that and letting them pick when they move up to the next challenge. And you're encouraging them, you're motivating, you're making a game about it. You're trying to say, hey, what about this next? Because we think you're ready, but letting them choose and not being upset if they make the choice of the easier thing because they get numbers down there. Whatever that is.
Yes, because all progress counts.
Right.
And every successful rep is a deposit in the confidence bank.
Right.
Every single one but there's this perfectionism focus that says, okay, 3 on low beam and then go to high beam.
Right.
And anything less than you doing it solidly on high beam is fail.
Right. And I do see a lot of coaches, once the kid has that day where they make X, whatever X is, like high beam, or they make the combo without a mat or whatever it is, they make that, then that's where they have to be every day. And what you should do as a coach is always take them back to the easier mats down, more low beam, put pads over the bar, whatever it is, always go back and then do that 1 or 2 back up where they were. But don't say, all right, now that coaches get that expectation. Well, you've done it on the real floor. Why do we need to go back to tumble track? Or whatever it is. And that's a really important lesson to learn, is always take them to the softer, easier drill, then do your small numbers on the scary or the hard way that they did at one time when they had that confidence and bravery. But don't keep pushing them up at that top level because mentally that's exhausting. I have kids who've had mental blocks, but they say, I can do 2 or 3 a day. And then I start getting in my head. And that's a hard concept for coaches. We're like, what did you do 1 to 3? But let them do whatever it is at the higher numbers that makes them feel comfortable, the 1 or 2 or 3. And those kids usually don't balk in the meet either. So we're like, all right, if that helps you mentally, let's do that. Yeah. Whatever gets you most confident.
Definitely.
That's hard for coaches to do.
Yeah. I call it front loading confidence. Mm-hmm. Go and do a bunch of something that you get a win, boost up, fill up that confidence bank so that then you get up on a high beam and you're already feeling reassured. You've already felt it be effortless.
Right.
Your brain hasn't seized you up and then made you off. And then you go to low beam and can't do it there either. Cause now you feel like you're failing because you're so negative because you got up and you used to do it yesterday. And it's like, oh, just all that drama can be prevented by a couple of drills.
Yes. And as the coach and as the parent, letting them be in the driver's seat. If you finally let them, okay, it's obvious they want to do this or don't want to do that or whatever it is, work with that. Like try to let them be the person driving the car instead of saying, well, what I told you to do or what you should be doing. Or sometimes we have parents who are telling, I think they should be doing this, or, they're pushing and the kid is like, it's like this battle, this tug of war, So try to let them, it's very hard because you're like, I know what they should be doing. And coaches kind of sometimes know the correct progressions, but it doesn't do you any good. So it helps if they're the ones deciding or on your side to do whatever you're asking.
Definitely. Well, and the kids have to feel safe to communicate. If they're always
Right.
being told what to do,
Right.
they don't even learn to ask, what do I need or what could I
Yeah.
do? They just stand there and go,
100%.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What should I do?
Yeah. So I haven't been to elite camps in a couple years, but there is some coaches where you see complete back and forth. And then you'll see other coaches where and the kid is just talking, and the kid is doing no talking, and the coaches are talking at them, and the kid is just nodding up and down, not ever getting to put in any input. And you do see those two different coaching styles. And I think this coaching style where they have no input is really dangerous because you don't really know what they feel or what they think or what is good for them because they're not telling you anything.
They don't even know. It's like they haven't built that muscle of
Right.
asking,
Right.
how did that feel? They just looked at their coach. Was that good?
Yeah.
To be able to check in, that one felt good. Or, learning, taking all feedback from one individual and a scoreboard.
All right.
Oof.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because we have parents, this quite often is happening. They want to see X results or X success or X level, whatever it is. And they'll say, well, I'm not paying for them to be here to not achieve. And that's a hard one. So I have my answers, but it's really, I would love to get your advice as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a mom. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I have completely, I've got this perspective of if my girls are happy and healthy first, success will follow. I believe that strongly. So that's my perspective. So I see these parents who are like, I need to get what I'm paying for. And I turn it around and go, well, if she never got that back handspring on the beam ever again, would you love her any less? Would you love her any less if she didn't get that round off back handspring back tuck by the mock meet? And they look, and well, of course I would love them. And then, I like to say, well, if they're feeling like they're only lovable when they are meeting certain benchmarks, that actually is going to tell their brain that there is a major threat to their health and safety if they do not achieve. That if they don't perform, they are going to be pushed out of the cave by their tribe, and they're not good enough and they don't deserve love. And that they get from your body language when you fall on the beam, from your, you have to do this or else. From that tells the developing adolescent brain, if you do not perform, you will die. The brain doesn't know the difference between a tiger in the gym and a judge. And so that added pressure creates this sense of threat that creates tension in the body, adrenaline. It messes up their focus, and it makes it so that they actually perform significantly worse. So the best thing parents can do to support their kids in being successful is to just remind them that they love them no matter what. That's going to set them up for that takes the tiger out of the gym with them. And you just have to remember, is your kid, are you going to still love your kid if they have a bad day on bars?
Right.
If so, let them remember that. Really, really let them know that. And the parent role, from my perspective, is food, hugs, rides, tuition, period. And if it's tough on your family to pay the tuition, that's for the parents to sort out, not for the kid to be responsible for.
100%.
Oh,
and we try to make it fun. And so sometimes parents will say stuff about like, well, I'm not paying for them to play games. And I'm like, well, we're not just playing games. We're playing a game that's in association with an assignment. But, so we get pushed back that way. But that's why I love sending out your podcast links, because it's like, hear this education, because we're trying to develop the whole child, not just the kid who gets to Excel Platinum, or whatever it is that you're really think is so important right now.
Yeah. Well, Simone Biles, actually, when she had her sort of first big mental meltdown in 2013, her mental coach assigned her to smile when that was the Simone smile was a prescribed thing that she had to have more fun so that she could perform better. So these kids in your gym that are smiling and laughing and playing, and they walk in the gym and they feel themselves and they have this community to arrive to where they feel safe. Those kids, because of those games, because of that bonding, are going to be better athletes and better humans.
That's what I believe too. Yes.
So they're investing in their child's mental health, happiness, and success.
Right.
So you're welcome. Cassie's kids, you're welcome.
Yeah. It's not, so the sport is not that important. And if you keep making it that important, you add all this stress and, it's my whole life. So it's important to me, but it's still a sport of gymnastics. It's not life and death. So we want to make sure they don't feel the weight of the world on their shoulders for a acrobatic sport like this.
Yeah. So where do you want to see this sport going? What do you want to see changing in the next, 5-10 years?
I would love to see from the top down all of these things that you talk about all the time. The triangle, I call it the triangle of success, which is parent, coach, and athlete, all understanding that we're here to support the athlete. And that education, I think, will go a long way. I think the gym owners, it's a really important thing because the culture of my entire gym is based on me and what I put out there in our weekly meetings, and the culture when we see a kid, going by and high-fiving them because they, walk their feet up the wall. Like they were so scared to touch the bar. So now they're walking their feet up the wall. Wonderful. Like creating that culture from the top down is really important, which is through USAG and club owners, and then getting that filtered out to the coaches under them, and the top level coaches kind of mirroring that back and forth, not the dictatorship style. I don't want to see, that we're dictator coaches and making the kid be told what to do every day instead of, okay, this is the plan. You have to let me know if we need to deviate from it because it's too hard, it's too much, or what it is you'd like to change. Because we're not supposed to be the god of assignments like I thought I was when I was a younger coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and like policies, I think gym policies can play a big part. Like I hear gyms that don't spot, gyms that, I'm curious your thoughts on if a kid has 3 out of 4 events and they're struggling on one skill, what do you recommend as sort of a humane way to approach that situation for competition?
As far as competing on that event?
Yeah, like if they've got a mental block that pops up on one event and their routine is not happening for a meet, how do you guys typically handle that?
We just tell them it's no big deal to scratch that event until they're feeling confident on it. We have a couple who are doing that right now, actually, and we just make it not a big deal. So when we've seen some gyms, there's like, yeah, we're not letting you compete, and it's this tone and attitude of you're bad and you're punished, and we try to just make it as a work in progress. This is what, Simone had issues. She's the greatest athlete of all time in our sport. It's okay. It's normal. You'll do it when you feel ready. We have confidence in you. Waiting till they build that inner confidence and get back on that event. Say this is part of the process, kind of normalizing everything about it. And the old way is like, the word unacceptable is one I have a hard time with too. It's like, if a behavior is unacceptable, what does that mean? If the kid's doing it right now, they're unacceptable. They're an unacceptable human being, so trying to, instead of have that intolerant language, but more normalizing tolerance. Yeah, that's what this girl does because that's what worked for her. Here's what's working for you. Not like well, she doesn't have to do it. And like, well, that's where she's at right now. And this is where you're at right now. And that's wonderful. It really giving them a voice and not feeling ostracized because of something that they're going through right now. And that we tolerate all of it.
Yeah. No.
Acceptance and tolerance, I think.
Acceptance. Yeah. I mean, it'll make your life so much better as the coach if you have that acceptance and tolerance for what is. It's happening. Right. So we might as well accept it. And now how do we move forward?
Right.
Okay. And then what about, I
I,
coached in the Bay
I don't
Area.
think any gym should have the we don't spot. I think I do have a little bit of the beam spotting in that you can lower mats and you can build mats up. So the spotter puts a variable in there that could mess a kid up too.
Yeah.
So, but like a beam dismount, there's, sometimes you stand there for their first double back off beam because it's a scary skill, but we still do it into pit, onto mats and all that stuff. But on bars, we stand there for any person that wants to anytime. And same with floor. If you're needing them standing there for mental side, we definitely never say no because that's what they decided they need. And sometimes we give them an alternative. Okay, can we do this today? So I'm not standing there for everyone, but letting them again feel in control and in the driver's seat, really important.
Yeah. Okay, so I coached in an area where there were a ton of gyms, in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, and there were, some gyms that just had like 39s. Like level 4s are getting like 39s. And I had my little team, I'm like, we're really pumped about a 35, 36,
Right.
like we're feeling good about ourselves. So as a young coach, I'd be like, how are they getting such high scores? What are they doing? What's wrong with me? And then I realized, oh, they're like level 8s competing level 4.
Right.
I'm curious what your thought is on sort of like keeping kids down to get those scores, how that affects the confidence of kids, like kind of what your balance is there.
Yeah, we had that when I first opened the gym here in Nevada. There was it was level 5 was the lowest level then, and it was the Olympics. It was like 995s, 995. And I'm like, we're not playing that game to just win at the lower level and hold kids back. We really want them to not feel unsuccessful at the next level, so we don't move them up if they're really not going to do well. But they need to feel good about what they're competing, but we don't hold them back to win. We're not playing that game because, you could hold everybody back and be in bronze and level 3 and win everything, but like, what's the point of that? And we do have some clubs we've competed against where they really kill our kids, and then we get to level 10 and we're beating them and we're like, what happened? Like, why? So we didn't really understand the whole mentality of that. And some people do it based on scores, and we just do it based on what they would feel like in the next level. As long as they're relatively successful, we think we want to keep challenging. And there's some kids that they're just never going to be really tight form, but they want to do those next level skills. So do you just hold them back forever because their knees just hardly ever look straight on things, So
Yeah.
really trying to individualize it and put it into like, what would you feel like if you were held in level 3 for 4 years, or whatever, whatever the school is doing. You want to put empathy is like, put yourself in their shoes. What would they feel like? So that's what our whole entire gym is based off of, is feelings. What would that parent feel like if you said that? What would this kid feel like? What would that coach feel like if you took their stations over? What would everybody feel like? And that's a great way to build success in the program, because this is what our whole business is, really, feelings.
Yeah, and they're humans. Oh, what
Yeah.
a perfect place to leave it.
Yeah.
Oh, Cassie, thank you so much for everything you're doing for the sport, for, your valuable experience of doing things not quite right, which has turned you into this amazing coach today. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, and there's a woman at Desert Gym Cats who was under you who turned me on to all of your stuff. So I was really Peyton Cutting, and her mom has just been so amazing and letting me know all about your work. I love it.
Oh,
I
yay.
wanted to
Shout
thank her.
out to her.
Yeah,
Yay. And I'm so happy there are people like you out there that make this mission of ours feel a little more possible and
awesome.
doable. Yeah,
It's
great.
an
Thank
uphill
you so
battle.
much. Yeah.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay, take care.